Back to Squawk on the Street, Rick Santelli here. You know, Tom Bergen's Reuters expose on Starbucks and other American companies, but really concentrating on Starbucks, using questionable loopholes, but not illegalities. There's no illegalities here, to maybe pay a smaller share of taxes than Parliament or the UK officials would like. We have Nigel Farage, who is in Parliament in the UK, and I would like to ask you, Nigel, but before I do, I want to make sure we give Starbucks a chance to address this ongoing story. And when we put forth the question to respond to these allegations, or at least these strategies, here's what they wrote back to us. The most important thing to understand is that Starbucks does pay tax in the UK. Indeed, over the last 3 years, we have paid over £160 million in various taxes, including national insurance contribution for our 8,500 UK employees and business rates. Now, hearing that, Nigel, do you have any comment regarding the committee set up to investigate these tax procedures versus the comments by Starbucks?
Well, Starbucks is spinning it their way. Of course they would, wouldn't they? But there's a big point everyone's missing in this. I know it looks hypocritical and wrong for a company that always plays it out on the world stage, hey, we're the good guys and we buy fair trade products and everything else. But here is the point that everybody is missing. And I think left-wing politicians are missing it. I think Reuters are missing it. Far from it being not just illegal to do what Starbucks are doing, actually here in Europe they're encouraged to do it. Because what the European Union has done, and it's also involved 3 other states, is they've deliberately set up a corporate tax structure that says you can buy and sell and make profits and trade in 29 countries, but you only have to pay tax in the country where you're brass plated. And this was a completely deliberate attempt, because remember, politically what's going on over here is they're trying to create a United States of Europe. And so what we now have is a big game of tax arbitrage that is going on in Europe. So Starbucks buy their coffee beans through a company in Switzerland, and they're due to pay their tax there. Google, who do huge business in the UK, pay corporation tax in Ireland, who've got a very low competitive corporate tax rate. So, frankly, there's no point having a committee of inquiry. These are the rules that were set up by our lords and masters here in Brussels.
Well, Nigel, you know, it's interesting because you picked up on why many, like myself, find this story fascinating. And it is because Howard Schultz is really about a company with a conscience. Here's a quote from Huffington Post by CEO Howard Schultz. I think that more and more companies must recognize that success is best when it is shared, and you have to achieve the balance between profitability and doing the right thing. You know, at this time, Nigel, in U.S. politics, the tax issues, corporate tax issues, paying fair share is like top of the heap and one of the most contentious debates going on in Washington. Do you think Howard Schultz is disingenuous in his activity in the UK? I don't want to put words in your mouth. Well, what do you think about his social conscience versus what he's doing with tax policy?
Well, I think what Mr. Schultz ought to do is to stop trying to have it both ways, because you can't, on the one hand, say we're the good guys, we're clean, we adopt a very, very good corporate social responsibility model, and on the other, do, albeit what the European Union have encouraged you to do. So make your mind up, Mr. Schultz. Either be the good guy, pay UK taxes, or stop selling the world this story that you are, such a wonderful man, and go on making the biggest corporate profit you can. You can't do both.
Well, I'll tell you, Nigel, in my opinion, for what it's worth, I love Starbucks coffee, and I don't really care about all these other issues. I buy the coffee I like best. I don't open up any other frontiers to this, so it really isn't me. But it is a big story, and I guess the final question I'm going to ask you is, how intense is this? In other words, are we talking, and they're not the only company, you brought up Google, there's others, McDonald's, but maybe to a lesser extent. How much money are we talking that you could collect if some of these rules were changed, in your opinion?
Well, if the rules were changed, and if the UK had a good, competitive tax structure that made it a very attractive destination, then we would be collecting many billions pounds more every year in income, which for a country the size of the UK does matter. But for the moment, it's an irrelevant debate, and I keep saying this to American audiences, because look, we are now impotent. Westminster may look pretty, but it's got no power. All of those powers, all of those decisions are now taken in Brussels, but I want to reverse that.
Nigel, thank you for being our guest. Carl, back to you.